This is episode 346 of SLP, or episode 2 of ICP, as our diversification continues. It's Internationals and Ice Creams week on Super League Pod this week, as we recap the international weekend with your fan reviews and return to our ice cream topic with your recommendations. We also get a lesson in Welsh, an update from the Villa, and stumble onto some thorny topics that we are not best placed commentators on. Strap in, it's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome to episode 346 of the Super League Pod. This week you have myself, Mark, and I'm joined by Alan. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, morning, afternoon to everybody.
Yes, indeed. Wherever and whenever, it's episode 346. Unlike what I thought this week, that next week's was 247 when I had the little spinny wheel thing for picking the guest host next week. Yeah, paused up there.
I liked your wheel. The wheel worked.
The wheel did work, yeah. And it was tense, weren't it? It was.
It only just clicked over.
It only just clicked over to David Hunter, who's going to be co-hosting the show next week. So we're having to figure out a time slot to record it that'll not be too inconvenient for either of us, because obviously David's down under and I'm here, and so, but we're going to make it work and it's going to be fun. I know that for sure. Do you want to tell everyone about our sponsor before we go any further?
Yes, so Super League Pod is supported by Rob's Megastore. Rob's Megastore stocks a wide variety of toys, stationery, arts and craft ideas, pet accessories, books, and of course, rugby league birthday cards. Search for Rob's Megastore on eBay and find the link in the episode blog post on superleaguepod.com. SLP listeners can use the code SLP10, that's SLP10 at checkout to get 10% off any order over £5. Or if you enter SLP discounts, you can give your 10% towards funding SLP's running costs instead.
Good stuff. Bit of a different show this week. We're going to go all international league pod this week. So ILP, I guess, rather than SLP. We're going to recap the 3 England games along with your fan reviews of those. We'll also take a bit of a general wander after that around the world of rugby league and the world of ice cream. That's not gone away yet. That's sticking around at least for another week. We're going to mix together some noteworthy bits of news from the last week alongside some fan views and feedback and bits like that for us to discuss. I'm going to be up front, I forgot about the NRL when I was putting the rundown together because it wasn't the normal rundown template I was using. So, yeah, we haven't got the NRL results in the rundown this week. But we will make our guesses for next week's return of Super League, as well as pick out a few of the other significant fixtures going on around the World Rugby League in the next 7 days, because there's the Wheelchair Challenge Cup final. There's also a whole host of rep and international games in the Southern Hemisphere next week. It would have been nice if they were all played this weekend, wouldn't it? And then it was just one big go at it. And I'm going to try and do it all without my hay fever interrupting too much, because I left the window open, even though not ideal, because I was thinking it's too hot. And then
it is too hot, yes.
Now it's too polleny, I guess. So yeah. But that's what we've got coming up on this week's show. Hope you enjoy it all the same as normal. Do you want to tell people about how they can get in touch and get involved with us on anything we do talk about this week?
Yes, on social media, it's at Super League Pod on Twitter and Instagram if you want to relive the tenseness of the spinning wheel. Or you can visit facebook.com/superleaguepod. You can email us at superleaguepod@gmail.com or visit superleaguepod.com to get the info on each episode and links to the Google Forms for your fan views that we can share and discuss on the show. Also, you don't forget to subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to us on and leave a rating or review if you can.
Right, good stuff. We're going to leave the intro there. We've got more feedback to pick up on, but we'll pick up on that later on in the show. We're going to move into the international match reviews. Okay, we're gonna recap the international matches. We'll do the 3 England games first. We'll do them in the order that they happen. Then we'll pick up some other bits and pieces of international results and also some international news stories as well to pick up on. We'll start as the fixtures did with the England women's game, which was played at the Halliwell Jones on Saturday before the men's game. Do you know what? I'll release some stats on these games, some amazing stats that they've put up on the Rugby League website. But they did it too late for them to be in the rundown, so we're not going to talk about those. But we're going to talk about the scores and the scorers. So England 36, France 10 was the final score. It was 16-4 to England at half time. So comfortable but close throughout, I think it's fair to say. I don't know how they picked this out as the crowd number, but 3,752 is the crowd they've given for the women's match. And I can't remember his first name, but Mr. Jones was the multilingual referee in charge. Do you want to take us through the scorers for both sides?
Yep, so for the winners England, there were tries from Dodds, Beavers, Hardcastle with 2, Roach with 2, and Fran Goldthorpe, and 4 goals for Tara Stanley. For France, there were tries for Songpush and Ramos, and there was a goal from Syria.
EFC78JU said Jodie Cunningham was on fire setting up a try and playing passes to be involved in the opportunities that England women were getting. France were clearly out of the game until they scored a try up in the east end of the HJ the first time they had it on the white line, and the ref didn't give it, so they gone and done it the second time. It was quite a close game near the end, but England women were the clear winners.
And Esther says, I thought the French did really good, especially at the start of the game. England were just too strong, but they seemed disjointed at times. Amy Hardcastle was really good. Caitlin is yummy, apparently.
Does she mean Beavers?
I assume so.
Yes, that's the only Caitlin I can think in that lineup. Fair play.
Yeah, I'm in no position to judge that. I'm old enough to bear fathers, most of them. So.
Yeah, she's young. She's not as young as she was when we first talked about her on this show, but she's still very young. That's how long she's been around.
Yeah, that's the insane thing about a number of these players, isn't it? That they're established players
now, like her and Georgia Roach and that, and they were just out of school when we first talked about them.
Exactly.
Paul Mac_78 said, better performance than last week from the English women. The inclusion of CWH, he means Winfield Hill, doesn't he, made a big difference. For mine, the best players were England's 12, 13 and 14, Rudge, Cunningham and Hoyle. For France, Biville impressed. Would love to see an annual Women's Euro A with England, France, Wales and Ireland. Results have shown that the gap isn't as big as it is in the men's. I'd not seen Ireland play against England yet, so I don't know what that gap might be. But France and Wales have been competitive against England, haven't they? And England they've mixed up the squad a little bit between the two games, the Welsh game last week and the French game this week. So I don't know where the coach Richards is at in terms of his first choice side when it comes to the end of the season. But what did you make of this performance in isolation?
In isolation, I suppose I was pleasantly surprised at how competitive it was. I don't know a great deal about the French domestic game in terms of the women. I don't know. I presume they have some kind of league format, but I have no idea how many games they play, how many teams there are. I'm completely ignorant from that point of view.
The side was drawn from 3 sides, wasn't it? But I don't know how many other how else it's structured in terms of how how the league's set up and stuff. No, I'm the same as you.
And I think my instinct would be that they might be slightly behind England in their setup. I just felt that some of the players didn't look quite as professional. Sounds like the wrong word. Do you know what I mean? They're perhaps a little bit behind in their physical development.
Yeah.
As kind of, I know they're not professionals, but do you know what I mean? They're kind of a lot of the setup and kind of the way that they are training, for example, certainly the top clubs, is becoming much more professional, isn't it? So I felt like there was, you could kind of see the difference between the two teams.
They
in that
looked
way.
a little chaotic with the ball, I thought, France at times. I didn't see too much structured play from them, whereas England, I think sometimes we're starting to see too much structured play from them. But that I think they're still working on things.
Yeah, I mean, generally it felt like it was a decent test for England. It's probably the best match that they can have in the Northern Hemisphere, isn't it? Which is the primary issue. That probably the two best teams it's very difficult to play against.
Yeah, well, arguably the three best teams. I guess PNG have been together as a team for a while now, haven't they? So there's that team as well that England had some good tussles with a couple of years ago pre-COVID.
That's very true.
I was the physicality on display, I think, across the board was pretty impressive, and that's what made it a game that drew you in, even though it always felt like it was going to be a one-sided result. I think that England. It amazes me that Winfield, Hill and Roach are still working on their combination when they've had a good number of games together now for Leeds and a good number of opportunities to train alongside each other. You'd think in the last sort of 5 months or so, but that it is still a work in progress. But this was the most impressed I've been with by Roach in what I would say is kind of a big platform game. I think there was times in the game where she took charge. There were certainly times in the game where Jodie Cunningham took charge too, and I think we will see that with her in this England side. But I do think there was some times where Georgia Roach took charge of the game. She had a good hand in the Dodd try, didn't she? And also she scored a couple of tries herself. So I'd say I was impressed with Georgia Roach in this game more so than I've been with her in any of the other big games I've seen her play. She's looked really good when she hasn't been challenged as much, but I think when she's been challenged like she was in this game, physically, she did a lot of work defensively, but she had the right stuff as well in attack. So I thought she stood out for me along with some of the other players that have been mentioned by some of the other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably true that the kind of the first choice 17 is probably a combination of the teams that played these two matches, isn't it? There's probably players who are going to come in from from both matches, probably. I mean, there was a bit of mention towards the end of the commentary that Richards didn't look particularly happy about the performance. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that in the sense that you are bound to be challenged by, this is a respectable international team that you're coming up against, and they did themselves a lot of credit, particularly early on, probably the first quarter of the match, by keeping it very. I think it was scoreless, wasn't it, the first quarter?
16, 17 minutes or something, wasn't it, before the first try? And I think it was similar in the game against France at the back end of last year as well, but this time it felt like it wasn't from England mistakes, it was from really, forceful French play and them actually turning the ball over on their terms quite a bit. Yeah.
So broadly, I was quite impressed with France, as I say, not being massively exposed to them as a team. But overall, I think England can be quite happy with the way that both of these matches have gone. And I think they're probably a bit better prepared than the men's team are, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, because there's no one to come in from outside of this group, really, is there, that I can see. There's a name escapes me. The last who went from Leeds to play down under. A name's gone though. That's the only player I can think of that hasn't been in all these training groups and stuff that could even be putting the name up for this side. So So yeah, in that sense, it's good. They've had 2 back-to-back games, haven't they? So they've had chances. They've got chances to look at things, fix things up, have another go, and and